Thus our great ideas changed into realities. When Thomas A. Edison invented the incandescent electric light bulb, he merely brought together two old, well-known principles and associated them in a new combination. Mr. Edison and practically all others who were informed on the subject of electricity knew that a light could be produced by heating a small wire with electricity, but the difficult problem was to do this without burning the wire in two. In his experimental research, Mr. Edison tried out every conceivable sort of wire, hoping to find some substance that would withstand the tremendous heat to which it had to be subjected before a light could be produced. His invention was half completed, but it was of no practical value until he could find the missing link that would supply the other half. After thousands of tests and much combining of old ideas in his imagination, Edison finally found this missing link. In his study of physics, he had learned, as all other students of this subject learn, that there can be no combustion without the presence of oxygen. He, of course, knew that the difficulty with his electric light apparatus was the lack of a method through which to control the heat. When it occurred to him that there could be no combustion where there was no oxygen, he placed the little wire of his electric light apparatus inside of a glass globe, shut out all the oxygen, and lo, the mighty incandescent light was a reality. When the sun goes down tonight, you step to the wall, press a button, and bring it back again, a performance that would have mystified the people of a few generations ago. And yet there is no mystery back of your act. Thanks to the use of Edison's imagination, you have simply brought together two principles, both of which were in existence since the beginning of time. No one who knew him intimately ever accredited Andrew Carnegie with unusual ability or the power of genius, except in one respect, and that was his ability to select men who could and would cooperate in a spirit of harmony in carrying out his wishes. But what additional ability did he need in the accumulation of his millions of dollars? Any man who understands the principle of organized effort as Carnegie understood it and knows enough about men to be able to select just those types that are needed in the performance of a given task could duplicate all that Carnegie accomplished. Carnegie was a man of imagination. He first created a definite purpose and then surrounded himself with men who had the training and the vision and the capacity necessary for the transformation of that purpose into reality. Carnegie did not always create his own plans for the attainment of his definite purpose. He made it his business to know what he wanted, then found the men who could create plans through which to procure it. And that was not only imagination, it was genius of the highest order. But it should be made clear that men of Mr. Carnegie's type are not the only ones who can make profitable use of imagination. This great power is as available to the beginner in business as it is to the man who has arrived. One morning, Charles M. Schwab's private car was backed on the side track at his Bethlehem steel plant. As he alighted from his car, he was met by a young man stenographer who announced that he had come to make sure that any letters or telegrams Mr. Schwab might wish to write would be taken care of promptly. No one told this young man to be on hand, but he had enough imagination to see that his being there would not hurt his chances of advancement. From that day on, this young man was marked for promotion. Mr. Schwab singled him out for promotion because he had done that which any of the dozen or so other stenographers in the employ of the Bethlehem Steel Company might have done, but didn't. Today this same man is the president of one of the largest drug concerns in the world, and has all of this world's goods and wares that he wants, and much more than he needs. A few years ago I received a letter from a young man who had just finished business college, and who wanted to secure employment in my office. With his letter, he sent a crisp $10 bill that had never been folded. The letter read as follows: I have just finished a commercial course in a first-class business college, and I want a position in your office because I realize how much it would be worth to a young man, just starting out on his business career, to have the privilege of working under the direction of a man like you. If the enclosed $10 bill is sufficient to pay for the time you would spend in giving me my first week's instructions, I want you to accept it. I will work the first month without pay, and you may set my wages after that at whatever I prove to be worth. I want this job more than I ever wanted anything in my life, and I am willing to make any reasonable sacrifice to get it. Very cordially. This young man got his chance in my office. His imagination gained for him the opportunity that he wanted, and before his first month had expired, the president of a life insurance company who heard of this incident offered the young man a private secretaryship at a substantial salary. He is today an official of one of the largest life insurance companies in the world. Some years ago, a young man wrote to Thomas A. Edison for a position. For some reason, Mr. Edison did not reply. By no means discouraged on this account, the young man made up his mind that he would not only get a reply from Mr. Edison, but what was more important still, he would actually secure the position he sought. He lived a long distance from West Orange, New Jersey, where the Edison Industries are located, and he did not have the money with which to pay his railroad fare. But he did have imagination. He went to West Orange in a freight car, got his interview, told his story in person, and got the job he sought. Today, this same man lives in Bradentown, Florida. He has retired from active business, having made all the money he needs. His name, in case you wish to confirm my statements, is Edwin C. Barnes. By using his imagination, Mr. Barnes saw the advantage of close association with a man like Thomas A. Edison. He saw that such an association would give him the opportunity to study Mr. Edison, and at the same time it would bring him in contact with Mr. Edison's friends, who are among the most influential people of the world. These are but a few cases in connection with which I have personally observed how men have climbed to high places in the world and accumulated wealth in abundance by making practical use of their imagination. The man who slanders his fellow man unwittingly uncovers the real nature of his inner self. It will make a big difference to you whether you are a person with a message or a person with a grievance. The reason most people do not like to hear the story of your troubles is that they have a big flock of their own. Theodore Roosevelt engraved his name on the tablets of time by one single act during his tenure of office as President of the United States. And after all else that he did while in that office will have been forgotten, this one transaction will record him in history as a man of imagination. He started the steam shovels to work on the Panama Canal. Every president, from Washington on up to Roosevelt, could have started the canal and it would have been completed, but it seemed such a colossal undertaking that it required not only imagination, but daring courage as well. Roosevelt had both, and the people of the United States have a canal. At the age of 40, the age at which the average man begins to think he is too old to start anything new, James J. Hill was still sitting at the telegraph key at a salary of $30 per month. He had no capital. He had no influential friends with capital, but he did have that which is more powerful than either: imagination. In his mind's eye, he saw a great railway system that would penetrate the undeveloped Northwest and unite the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. So vivid was his imagination that he made others see the advantages of such a railway system, and from there on the story is familiar enough to every schoolboy. I would emphasize the part of the story that most people never mention, that Hill's Great Northern Railway system became a reality in his own imagination first. The railroad was built with steel rails and wooden cross ties, just as other railroads are built, and these things were paid for with capital that was secured in very much the same manner that capital for all railroads is secured. But if you want the real story of James J. Hill's success, you must go back to that little country railway station where he worked at $30 a month, and there picked up the little threads that he wove into a mighty railroad, with materials no more visible than the thoughts which he organized in his imagination. What a mighty power is imagination, the workshop of the soul, in which thoughts are woven into railroads and skyscrapers and mills and factories and all manner of material wealth. I hold it true that thoughts are things, they're endowed with bodies and breath and wings, and that we send them forth to fill the world with good results or ill. That which we call our secret thought speeds forth to earth's remotest spot, leaving its blessings or its woes, like tracks behind it as it goes. We build our future thought by thought, for good or ill, yet know it not, yet so the universe was wrought. Thought is another name for fate. Choose then thy destiny and wait, for love brings love, and hate brings hate. If your imagination is the mirror of your soul, then you have a perfect right to stand before that mirror and see yourself as you wish to be. You have the right to see reflected in that magic mirror the mansion you intend to own, the factory you intend to manage, the bank of which you intend to be president, the station in life you intend to occupy. Your imagination belongs to you. Use it. The more you use it, the more efficiently it will serve you. At the east end of the Great Brooklyn Bridge in New York City, an old man conducts a cobbler shop. When the engineers began driving stakes and marking the foundation place for that great steel structure, this man shook his head and said, "It can't be done." Now he looks out from his dingy little shoe repair shop, shakes his head and asks himself, how did they do it? He saw the bridge grow before his very eyes, and still he lacks the imagination to analyze that which he saw. The engineer who planned the bridge saw it a reality long before a single shovel of dirt had been removed for the foundation stones. The bridge became a reality in his imagination, because he had trained that imagination to weave new combinations out of old ideas. Through recent experiments in the Department of Electricity, one of our great educational institutions of America has discovered how to put flowers to sleep and wake them up again with electric sunlight. This discovery makes possible the growth of vegetables and flowers without the aid of sunshine. In a few more years, the city dweller will be raising a crop of vegetables on his back porch with the aid of a few boxes of dirt and a few electric lights, with some new vegetable maturing every month of the year. This new discovery, plus a little imagination, plus Luther Burbank's discoveries in the field of horticulture, and lo, the city dweller will not only grow vegetables all the year around, within the confines of his back porch, but he will grow bigger vegetables than any which the modern gardener grows in the open sunlight. In one of the cities on the coast of California, all of the land that was suitable for building lots had been developed and put into use. On one side of the city there were some steep hills that could not be used for building purposes, and on the other side the land was unsuitable for buildings because it was so low that the backwater covered it once a day. A man of imagination came to this city. Men of imagination usually have keen minds, and this man was no exception. The first day of his arrival he saw the possibilities for making money out of real estate. He secured an option on those hills that were unsuitable for use because of their steepness. He also secured an option on the ground that was unsuitable for use because of the backwater that covered it daily. He secured these options at a very low price because the ground was supposed to be without substantial value. With the use of a few tons of explosives, he turned those steep hills into loose dirt. With the aid of a few tractors and some road scrapers, he leveled the ground down and turned it into beautiful building lots. And with the aid of a few mules and carts, he dumped the surplus dirt on the low ground and raised it above the water level, thereby turning it into beautiful building lots. He made a substantial fortune. For what? For removing some dirt from where it was not needed to where it was needed. For mixing some useless dirt with imagination. The people of that little city gave this man credit for being a genius. And he was. The same sort of genius that any one of them could have been had he used his imagination as this man used his. In the field of chemistry, it is possible to mix two or more chemical ingredients in such proportions that the mere act of mixing gives each of the ingredients a tremendous amount of energy that it did not possess. It is also possible to mix certain chemical ingredients in such proportions that all the ingredients of the combination take on an entirely different nature, as in the case of H2O, which is a mixture of 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, creating water. Chemistry is not the only field in which a combination of various physical materials can be so assembled that each takes on a greater value, or the result is a product entirely foreign in nature to that of its component parts. The man who blew up those useless hills of dirt and stone and removed the surplus from where it was not needed over to the lowland where it was needed, gave that dirt and stone a value that it did not have before. A ton of pig iron is worth but little. Add to that pig iron carbon, silicon, manganese, sulfur, and phosphorus in the right proportions, and you have transformed it into steel, which is of much greater value. Add still other substances in the right proportion, including some skilled labor, and that same ton of steel is transformed into watch springs worth a fortune. But in all these transformation processes, the one ingredient that is worth most is the one that has no material form. Imagination. Here lie great piles of loose brick, lumber, nails, and glass. In its present form it is worse than useless, for it is a nuisance and an eyesore. But mix it with the architect's imagination, and add some skilled labor, and lo, it becomes a beautiful mansion worth a king's ransom.